All right, my animation is finished. It's posted. Now I need my third requirement, which is the refined storyboard sketch. And this is how we get it. So I showed you at the end of the last video how I took all of my layers or all of my timeline frames and I said flatten frames into layers, and then it labeled them as frames. Then I deleted all the layers. My animation now will play very cleanly without any layer styles or tricks anymore, right? So this is the cleanest way to code a GIF. And so this is the stage file that I save. Does that make sense? And what it really is no matter what kind of digital tricks we played with tweens or opacity or layer styles, this just turns it all into a flip book where every layer is 100% opaque and it just plays through in order, like an animation flip book. Does everyone know what an animation flip book is? Yeah, mostly? If not, this is going to help for the metaphor. They're great. I have some around. I can pass them around. But anyway, I'd have to find them. Animation flip book, YouTube. Let's see. Yes, here we go. So you just draw frame by frame, and then you flip through the pages, right? And that's at about 24 frames per second. So it's a pretty good hands-on traditional analog for what we're doing, right? All right. So by flattening the frames, hopefully that doesn't give me a copyright thing when I try to put it to YouTube. When we flatten our frames into layers, now each of these is a full flipbook page. So that should make sense. Now we are ready to change the name of this file, because now we're going to tear out 9 of those pages from the flipbook and arrange them perfectly in a very controlled layout to do the refined storyboard sketch. So let's save it as, and I'm going to rename it from the stage, this is our third Photoshop file for assignment 3, to our refined storyboard. This is what we put in our portfolio and we print if we want to show off our storytelling and animation skills. Because you can't print a full animation, right? Unless you make a flipbook. All right, it's going to save to assignment 3. That's fine. This is also a good time for me to put my movie file, my MP4, and my GIF file, those are my time-based media examples, into my assignment 3 folder so I don't lose them on the desktop. And this is my refined storyboard. It just saved right there. All right, now I can get rid of the timeline frames, and I need to actually get rid of them. So select them all, drag them to the trash, and then I can close the timeline. If you close the timeline without first deleting the frames, weird things can happen to your layers. Next, I need to make sure I have my rulers turned on, because layout is all about controlling where things go within the overall format. So the rulers need to be on, and they need to be set to inches. So if mine is 8 inches or 8 by 8 inches by 100 pixels per inch, right? Then I should see 8 inches at the top, 8 inches at the side. If they are not set to that, this is what you do. First, you turn on your rulers by hitting Command R. You can also find that under the view options. And then you say file, or I'm sorry, then you can change your rulers into inches if they're not there by going to Photoshop Settings, Units and Rulers, make sure the rulers are in inches. Now for different kind of layout parameters, like if I'm doing something for European publication or if I'm working with an art director that prefers to use the metric system, I want to change my rulers to that setting, right? But we're going to use inches. Then you say OK. So we have our inches. Now with the move tool, I click on the ruler and I bring guides down. And the guides should snap to the edges of my frames. And you do it on all 4 sides. This is like putting little boards against your flipbook. So that whole stack of flipbook layers are all lined up straight. Okay, next, we have to deal this flipbook onto a table. So before you do that, just make sure that it is named Refined Storyboard, that you're not overwriting your stage animation. And I can also close my assets file. I don't need this anymore. Okay. Next, we need to put this flip book on a table. We need something to tear out the pages and place them. So I'm going to grow my canvas size. And I'm going to grow it to a dimension we've used before, which is 30 by 40 inches. Now, before we did 30 by 40 inches to give us workspace around our compositing projects, our landscapes, our creatures. But now we're doing 30 by 40 inches at only 100 pixels per inch. So what is 30 by 40 inches at 100 pixels per inch? If I look at image size and I uncheck resample and I set this at print resolution, which is 300, this is 10 by 13 1/3 inches at 300 pixels per inch, which means this gives us up to an 11 by 14 inch print of our animation storyboard. So that's why we want it to be 30 by 40 by 100 pixels per inch. It just works out well that way. Okay, now I have the table, I have my stack of flipbook pages, but I don't like the tablecloth. This gray gingham tablecloth really hurts my eyes. So I'm going to put a nice clean white tablecloth on it. I go to my bottom frame, I click new layer, so I get a new blank layer, and I say edit, fill, and then I set that to white at 100%. And then I put it behind. Now the reason I showed a lot of you, outside of the video how to do this before is because this is where most students mess up. Not on the animation, not on the transformation, not on the concept, but just on the technical layout, getting things to all match. And I'll show you why it really matters, especially when it comes time for printing, which is coming up after spring break. So now I'm going to put that tablecloth underneath, and now I need to make a little bit of equal space around my flipbook for the pages. So to do that, I go to View, and I go to Show, and I go to Grid. This is not pleasant on the eyes, but it looks better when it's in inches than when it's in any other measurement. The shortcut for it is Command apostrophe. So you can toggle it on and off with Command apostrophe. It's always there. Why this is so helpful is that each of these big boxes is 1 inch. And I want you to drag a new guide 1 inch from the edges of your flipbook on all 4 sides. So it just changes from gray to blue, and it will lock to those inches. If it's not locking, if you're having trouble getting it in the exact place, this is important for layout in Photoshop. You go to your View options, and you'll see Snap. You want to make sure Snap is checked, and you want to make sure that it snaps to all of these things, to your guides, to your grids, to your layers, to your document bounds, which is like the edges of your pixels. Okay, once you've done that, you can hit Command apostrophe to get rid of the grid. And now, that's a lot easier to look at visually. Then you hit Command 0, fits it all on the screen. So now, because our pixels will snap to those guides, now we just place the 9 best frames to tell our story. So I'll start with frame 1. I also like flattening them into frames because then it numbers them in order of your animation. So frame 1 is at the beginning. The highest number frame is at the end. So frame 1, I'm just going to use the move tool. I'm going to have auto select turned off so that I can just grab it and move it. Frame 1 is going to go right there. Then what's my next frame going to be? Well, that one doesn't make much visual difference. So I'm looking for the next frame that gives me some visual difference. I have the beak starting to peek in there, but this one's maybe a little bit stronger. So I'm going to use that for my frame 2. And I can use my sketch as a guide, my rough storyboard sketch, but maybe my animation ended up being a little different than my sketch. So this is a new way to tell the story. So then maybe frame 7 will be my third frame. Because all I'm showing in that top one is that I'm introducing the creature in the setting. Simple enough. Okay, now I go to the next row. And the creature's going to come in, frame 8, that looks pretty good. He's opening his mouth. Frame 9, his mouth opens wide. Then he puts it around. So which one do I want? So I think I might want, let's see, I'm going to change it up a little bit. Because you've got all of your animation frames, you get to decide which one to put where. So I might go from this to this to this, right? And that kind of works, even though I'm slowing it down a little bit. And now, what goes over here? I want to show him kind of pulling it out of the ground, maybe like that. Okay. So now the story is pretty clear. Now it gets kind of crazy, right? So they're always going to show up in the middle. So what's the next step? Maybe it's this. So I nest that down there. It snaps in. If you have a white background on your animation, you might want to turn off the white so that you can make sure that it's snapping in. But otherwise, I like to hide that gray with the white background. Okay, maybe the next one, he needs to kind of suck up the environment pretty quickly, so that one's pretty strong. But this one I think is even better. And then I'm going to go right to near the end, right? Something like this. And actually, maybe I like this one more for there. Now, it doesn't make sense to start with it or to end with it being blank white. You know, that's not very visually exciting. So don't have a blank white refined storyboard. But whatever you choose, whatever you think tells the story. And it's not that exciting to have my last storyboard be him leaving, because that's more for the animation. So I think this best tells my story. And I can tinker with different frames in different places. But what you want is for it to be beginning, middle, end, right? And to really be able to see the transformation as much as you can in the storyboard, even though it might be featured a little bit stronger in your GIF or in your animation. Okay, then you can turn off your guides, Command semicolon. And then you're going to save this, Command S, because it's a separate Photoshop file. It's saving to my Assignment 3 folder. There it is. So now I have a stage file as a PSD, an assets file as a PSD, and a storyboard file as a PSD. Those are all for me, but the ones that go online are my rough storyboard sketch, my GIF, and then a JPEG of my refined storyboard. So I'm going to say save a copy, and then change that to JPEG because we're filling a whole rectangle, and then save. And you want it to be, if you can, no larger than 5 megabytes. So I'm going to do it at a quality of 11. And this is millions of colors. This isn't limited by the 256 pixels of your GIF, right? So this will be nice and sharp. Okay, then you can close it. And we're done with Photoshop for this project, but I need to put that JPEG as the third requirement into Assignment 3 in Canvas. So I'm going to edit my post. We're going to do a presentation critique of these next class. as a way to just kind of welcome you guys back from spring break. We get to do a viewing of everyone's animation and storyboards.